When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From the City of Angels in Los Angeles, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver at caregiverdave.com, along with my lovely co-host, best-selling author and former mayor of Grover Beach in Central California, Debbie Peterson. We're also coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on numerous syndicated radio and podcast networks on 30 global audio and video platforms. We're so proud to be voted #1 caregiver podcast on FeedSpot out of thousands and #1 caregiver podcast of the top 50 on Player FM. And we have an especially exciting show planned for you today. What if changing your thoughts could change your life? Join Armida Espinoza as she shows how mindset shapes everything. Armida, so great to have you on the Caregiver Dave show.
Thank you for having me, Dave and Debbie.
And Debbie, so nice to see you again. We should see each other more than once a week. How are you?
Hey, how are you, Dave? I'm doing great today.
Good. And we're both on the coast, so we've been having some really good weather, haven't we?
Oh, fabulous. At the beach. You bet.
I had some wonderful days sailing, and it was about time because June and July were just so gloomy.
Yeah.
And you are from Fresno, Armida, right?
I am. And
Fresno, California. For those who don't know where that is, that's like up north and inland where it's very, very hot.
It's really right in the middle, but it is hot.
Yes. People will say, you live in Fresno. And I go, you know what? It's 2.5 hours away from Yosemite, from Carmel and Monterey, 3 hours from San Francisco and Los Angeles. I said, well, we could do, those are day trips for us. So
I always like to ask my guests just who is Armida Espinoza and why was she placed on this?
Yes. So thank you for asking. I'm a retired educator. And I must admit, I've always loved writing, but I've only written for myself. And the only one that got to read my writings was my husband, because he was a safe zone, right? But when I retired, I just thought, I'm going to just hide away in my little cocoon and just write my little heart away, and I'll be a happy little camper. But the thought occurred to me to take a writing class, a children's writing class. I'd never done that. And one thing led to another, from one thing to the other, and I was encouraged to publish a book. And so my first book, Brave Lolies Learns English, is a bilingual book. And that was the first book. And so a second book came the year after. So, yeah, that's a little bit about my background.
Do you have one with you that you can pick up and show us what it looks like?
I do. This is...
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, that's nice.
So it was an experience that I had in first grade. First day of school, the teacher had me recite my ABCs. And I got stuck at G. It was a new school, new teacher. I didn't know any of the kids. And the shame and the embarrassment that I felt was overwhelming. I was only 6 years old. So I felt very much less than everybody else. I felt like I was the only one in the world that didn't know my ABCs. And now the teacher knew I wasn't smart. And soon my peers would know I wasn't smart. And so not a good place to be for a 6-year-old.
That's a lot of negative thoughts for a 6-year-old.
They ran rapid.
What do you attribute all that negativity to?
I think I just got nervous. And as I said, it was a new teacher, new classroom. I didn't know anybody. And so I just felt really ashamed and embarrassed, and so unfortunately, I listened to my negative self-talk, and it took me into a very deep, dark hole. Throughout my elementary years and my high school years, I literally convinced myself that if I just did the best that I could on my own, without asking for help, that I could get through it.
Do what they say.
Did that work?
It did not. Not good advice.
I was going to say, it's true what they say, sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you. But that's not true. Words hurt you more than sticks and stones.
Yes, and especially words that things that we tell ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that is being told to us or said to us, but I think the more damaging is what we say to ourselves, because that voice does not stop. It's a constant.
Debbie, can you ask our guests our first question?
Yeah, I was really curious about your first grade experience, because you said Lolita being brave enough to learn English is the theme of the book. So when you were trying to recite your ABCs, did you know them in Spanish? Were you speaking English at that point?
So, it's interesting. When I picked the title, I wasn't coming at it from the perspective that I was learning a second language because I was the youngest of six. So by the time I went to school, I knew I had a solid, not academic English, but I had an English base. But English really is a difficult language, whether you're monolingual or bilingual. And so that's where the title came from.
Oh,
I have another question. This is just personal, but I used to help out in my son's class, and there were a lot of bilingual children, and I used to love to tell the bilingual children that my understanding was that it makes you 10% brighter. It lifts your IQ 10%, so good for them. But was that, as an educator, is there evidence for that? Do you agree with that?
Yes, actually there is. I don't remember. I have never heard a particular percentage, but because the brain is working twice as fast or twice as much on a daily basis and going from one to the other. Yes, students that are bilingual, if they receive a strong academic program in Spanish and English concurrently, they do actually score higher than monolingual students.
Yay.
Yes.
yeah. Now, our audience is burned out caregivers, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 70. How does what you do and what's in your book and relate to them and help them with, their problems of stress and burnout and not having boundaries, etc.?
Yes. So being a care provider myself, I was a care provider for my father, who was bedridden for 10 years. And then my mom passed away at 90, and I had a sister who was Down syndrome and had started getting seizures her last year before my mom passed away. So I resigned from my educational program and brought my sister over to live with me. And so I became her care provider for a couple of years until she passed away as well. And so the interesting thing about it, when I wrote this story, I must admit, I wrote the story and I just thought, it was a cute story. But it wasn't until I started going around to the schools and sharing my story with the children that so many dots in my own personal life started connecting and realizing how my own self-talk, negative self-talk, had influenced me throughout my elementary, middle school, and high school. So as a care provider, I came to realize that what I was telling myself, whether when I was young or when I was older in that situation, a lot of times I beat myself up, because, as care providers, we want to just make sure that we're doing the best that we can. And it's very easy to get caught up in I didn't do enough. I could do more. I should have done this. I should have done that. So, that negative voice just pops in. And it's, if we don't catch ourselves and change our thinking, then that negative voice gets the best of us. And it just goes south from there.
The coulda, woulda, shouldas. Most caregivers, I would be bold enough to say that whatever problems they're going through started as a child. So maybe you can give some insights as to, because you're really helping children, and that's the time to help people is when they're children, because we build these phobias and these fears and these doubts and these insecurities that stay with us for the rest of our lives unless we deal with them. So any advice to these caregivers who are suffering from things that maybe started out in grade school?
Dave, that's a good question. And yes, I think that if we need to really, and I know this is really difficult as a care provider because we never feel like we have a moment to spare because the list of things to do for our loved ones is enormous. But as enormous as that list is, if we don't take a few minutes to think about what we're thinking, and if recognizing that if we're having negative thoughts, it's not helping us and it's not helping the situation, right? And so those negative thoughts are from experiences that could happen in first grade, second grade, or any time throughout their life, right? And those moments will keep coming up. And so taking the moment to stop and recognizing that those moments are popping up, those experiences are popping up and getting the best of us, that we need to just be more mindful of what we're thinking. And as I said, if the thought is a negative thought, then switch it. So I made little bracelets that I now give away for my presentations. And the bracelet says, "What are you thinking?" It's a very inexpensive little plastic bracelet, the kind you could buy like 300 for, 300 bracelets for $100. But I wear it because we are so inundated with so many thoughts throughout the day. And we don't even pay attention to the fact that maybe a lot of those thoughts are hurting us. And so whenever I look down at the bracelet and I think to myself, what am I thinking? It gives me the opportunity to stop for a second and just say, what am I thinking? What was that one thought I just had? Did it benefit me or not? Was it a thought that was beating me up? Because if it wasn't a thought that was supporting me and helping me, switch it and then just move on with your day.
Yeah, and I would even add to that, what are you feeling?
Yes. I
always ask myself, why am I thinking what I'm thinking? Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? Because, the devil may just throw a negative seed in your head, and you'll stop and feel something in your gut. And say, that must be the pizza I ate, and just go on. And that seed will now germinate and grow, and maybe 6 months or 6 years later, it knocks you down because you didn't pull it up like a weed.
Yes, that's true. If we have the time to really go deep into the why we're feeling those feelings. But a lot of times, as you said, our list is so huge that, if we could even take a second to just check in with ourselves to see what are we thinking, and correct it at that moment.
Do you have any specifics for how to do that? I know sometimes if I'm thinking something negative, it's really hard to turn it to positive. I just can't seem to process that. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes, something as simple. So I'm thinking myself when I was taking care of my sister, a lot of the thoughts were, am I making something for her to eat that's healthy enough? Or am I just grabbing something because time is of essence, right? So, I would look at what I was serving her. I'm like, oh my God, it could be healthier. Just things like that, right? And I would just catch myself and just say, you're doing the best you can with what you have at the moment, and just take a deep breath. And so I would kind of switch it around and think to myself, this is a healthy meal, and this is the best that I could do right now. So just something simple as that. It's not as heavy on me. It wasn't as heavy on me.
Yeah.
Well, as a care provider yourself, what were some of your biggest challenges?
So I think so a lot of times it was just getting through the day. Just getting through the day. I was very fortunate that I had support, some help, but of course they're not there 24/7, right? You're there 24/7. They come and go, and you don't get to come and go. You don't get to leave it behind. You don't get to give it over to somebody else. It's you. And so one of the biggest things that I really told myself, and I really stuck to it, was I made it a point to leave the house every day, even if it was for half an hour or an hour, because I thought, if I don't leave, I'm going to go crazy.
Great point.
One time I found myself at a Lowe's store returning screw that my husband had bought. You know how they come in the little packages?
Right.
They had seen the screw on the counter in the kitchen. I'm like, what's with the screw? He goes, oh, it was too big or it was too small. And I go, I'll return it. So I drove to Lowe's, and that was my outing for the day. To
Any excuse.
any,
Was
help
there
you
a
with-
point at which you realized that you were doing the negative self-talk was there a process of turning it around?
No, there wasn't a point because I mean, I got to tell you, those negative thoughts pop in a lot. So it's not like, and so because our thoughts are just, a lot of times they're just random thoughts, right? So it's, I don't believe that we can, get into practice of checking and switching our negative thoughts to something positive. And then eventually, if we do it enough, we're never going to have negative thoughts. On the contrary, I think they're always going to be with us because we're lifelong learners and we're always going to be challenged. And when you're challenged, that negative voice will pop up. So it's just becoming more mindful and catching yourself before you go too far down that road.
So you know what burnout is. Another way of saying you're losing your sanity. How did you keep your sanity? How did you keep from burning out, or did you burn out?
When you have a loved one that's in need, you don't even get to recognize that you're burned out. You don't. You just need to keep going, right? When my sister passed away, in retrospect, when I think about it now, I think to myself, wow, that was pretty heavy, but I mean, and I get emotional when I think about it because I think, I can't believe I got through it.
Well, I'm sure
Good for
God
you.
helped you. I don't know how people get through it without God.
Yeah. I mean, you need to have faith.
Debbie?
Is it something that you're teaching to children now, or will it be the next book for the children?
So yes, so now I go around and do these presentations, and I always, and my main point is, I want children as young as we can to get them to understand that we all adults, and for the rest of their lives, that voice will pop up when they least expect it. And the more mindful they are about checking in with their thoughts throughout the day, the more they'll be able to catch themselves and switch their thoughts so that going forward, it just becomes a habit, an easier habit for them instead of, at the end of the day or at the end of the week and you stop and you evaluate your day or your week and you just go, okay, there was a lot of negativeness. So, yes.
I have a friend who's a psychologist who teaches mindfulness, has a program for high schoolers to help prevent suicide. And she was told when she was starting it by all the other psychologists, you can't teach teenagers mindfulness. It sounds to me like you're teaching elementary school children mindfulness.
Yes. And yes. And I've got to tell you, my meditation really helped me because I had been meditating for about 20 years prior to all of this. But that really helped me because it allowed me to quiet my mind instead of allowing it to go all over the place, right? But yeah, they're teaching meditation in elementary schools now.
And you meditated while you were a caregiver? I can't find time when I'm not a caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of times I would just, when I would go to bed, right, or just close my eyes, and then I would just kind of breathe and just kind of give myself a little respite. And then I'd fall asleep because I was so dead tired.
That's one thing, you don't have trouble sleeping unless you have to wake up to take care of your loved one.
Yes.
You just fall into bed.
Yes.
So what have you learned about yourself that you wish you had known during the time you were caring for family members?
Well, I wish I would have known that the importance of being mindful of my daily thoughts. Because, a lot of times I just was just on automatic.
So where did you learn this? How'd you come up with this? It's a pretty amazing insight and it's hard to do.
Well, I think helping with the meditation allowed me to have that experience. But yeah, I got to tell you, it wasn't until I started going around and reading my book to children that the dots started connecting. It's been a very interesting year and a half, 2 years now, because all of a sudden I see my whole life in front of me and I see the connections of the different dots. So yeah, I'm 69, so it's a long journey.
Great age.
I'm 2 years older than you. Why don't you, I don't know if you're prepared for this, but I wish you would be. Can you read something from your book that would
Yeah.
move us?
Sure.
Do the bilingual.
There's one page where, and of course I tell people when I wrote this book, because it's a children's book, you have to, ideally it should be under 1,000 words, and you have to have a happy ending, right? Which was not the case for me, right, initially, but in the book it is. But at one point, Lolis, the character, is, the first day of school, she gets tested on ABCs, she gets stuck at G. The next day, the teacher does a vocabulary test. She doesn't know a lot of words. She knows some, but doesn't know. So every day, it just keeps building up the anxiety of the, I don't know. And so her mother, when she puts her to bed, her mother is also learning English. And so Lolis would hear her mother whisper to herself that learning English was fun. By the second night, Lolis she's reached her breaking point, and so she says that learning English is hard, and she doesn't want to go to school anymore. She blurs it out. So the conversation with the mom goes like this: sitting on the bed next to Lolis, her mom says, "Learning something new is not always easy." "Why is learning English easy for you?" Lolis asks. "It's easy because I tell myself it's easy." "Kind of like pretending?" Lolis asks. "Exactly," Mom says. "The more I pretend, the easier it gets." "When does it get easier?" Lolis asks. "As soon as you start believing. It may not happen right away, but it'll happen. You just need to believe." "Well, I'll try," Lolis says. "I'll try." And as Lolis falls asleep, she whispers to herself, "Learning English is easy and fun." So she creates her own little mantra. Mm-hmm. And that's what pushes her, that's what gets her through.
So this applies, this little book, we could read it as caregivers, even as seniors, and come out of it better off.
Yes. Again, the message or the storyline is just being mindful of what we're telling ourselves and catching our thought or what we're saying to each other, to ourselves, and switching it to something very simple. Doesn't have to be complicated, and you don't have to go too far into it. Just switch it and believe, right? We've talked about having faith.
So the more I pretend, the easier it gets. It's like fake it till you make it.
In a way, yes. Because if you think about it, it's like you're really not faking it. You're just experiencing it, right?
You're pretending that you're an actor on TV playing a role.
Right.
And sometimes many times they do a very good job. And these actors don't know anything about what they're pretending to do.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Well, easy techniques for maintaining your balance and navigating burnout. Do you have any easy techniques, or there are no easy techniques? They're all hard.
Well, like I said, if you could put your phone on, put a little alarm on your phone, maybe every half an hour, you just hear a little bing, right? Nobody has to know why. But whenever you hear that little, bell or ding that goes off, just ask yourself, what am I thinking? And so that throughout the day, you get into the habit of asking yourself. Because initially, I would go to bed, I would wake up in the morning and I was thinking, or I would go to bed at night and I was thinking, tomorrow, I'm going to be mindful, I'm going to be thoughtful, I'm going to be reflective. And then the next morning, I'd get up, take a shower, and go right back into taking care of my loved one. And I wouldn't even give it another thought until that following, the next night. I was like, okay, was I reflective? Was I mindful? No. So you could just put the alarm on your phone, and whenever you hear it, just check in. What are you thinking?
Can you think of anything else to ask our guest, Debbie?
Well, I was thinking you could also snap your little bracelet, or every time you see your little bracelet, you have to, you
Yes.
have to think something positive. So can you tell us again how we can reach you and the name of your book?
Yes, so the book is titled Brave Lolis Learns English, and you can find me on my website, armidaespinoza.com. My book is on Amazon, so it's very easy to access it there.
I see another book behind you, Box of what? Box of Hope?
Yes, so
Tell us about that.
the sequel, Brave Lolis Box of Hope, came out in 2023. Do you remember the hurricane that hit Puerto Rico in 2017 or 19?
Uh-huh.
I came home from work and I was channel surfing, and I caught the news, and there was an anchor woman, and she was showing all the devastation that had happened in Puerto Rico. And she interviewed, and oh my God, that made this interview made me cry, because she interviewed this little old man. There was a little old man that had heard about the hurricane. He lived on the opposite end of the island where there was no damage, and he heard of the devastation. So he had an extra bag of grain. He mounted it on his donkey, tracked over the mountain to bring the bag of grain to the other side of the island to help folks. And I was just like in tears. I was thinking, oh my God, you do the best that you can with what you have, right? Mm-hmm. And so the storyline goes that Lolis is watching the news with her mom. And she decides that she wants to help, but she thinks she'll help when she's an adult. Mm-hmm. And the mom says, you could help now. And Lolis, well, I'm just a kid. What am I going to do now? And so I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story, but Lolis finds a way to help Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
So you have 2 books.
Yes.
And is there anything else you'd like to share before we say goodbye?
No, just, I would say just when we're doing the best we can with what we have from where we're at, then we need to go easy on ourselves, right? And not beat ourselves up. And
you have a website, right?
I do. ArmidaEspinoza.com.
All right, that's ARMIDA Espinoza, just like it sounds.
Yes.
Except there's a Z, S-E-S, and then at the end it's a Z-A.
Yes.
Espinoza.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And it's very, very good information that you shared. I know a lot of caregivers will be helped by that. I just can't believe how fast our time has gone. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you, Debbie, for being here every single week and helping us out. Debbie, how can people get a hold of you and find out all the wonderful things you do?
MayorDebbie.com is the easiest. You can also go to Amazon and look for Debbie Peterson, Integrity 101. I have a whole series of books on how to make local government work better for people.
Great. Remember that all our live shows become recorded, pod, and video casts on all your favorite platforms. And my #1 best-selling book, It's Your Life Too, How to Survive and Thrive as a Caregiver, is available wherever books are sold. Also, my free membership website, caregiverdave.com, where you can also schedule a free 30-minute initial coaching call, talk about whatever you want to talk about. You can also join my community of 34,000 caregivers on Facebook. So again, a big thank you to all my listeners out there all over the world for tuning in every Wednesday and making us the #1 caregiver podcast on the internet. So until next week, same time, same channel. May God richly bless you all. Bye-bye.
Dave Nasani, the Caregiver's Caregiver, has just released his 6th book entitled It's My Life Too, Thrive to Stay Alive as a Caregiver. It was specifically written for caregivers who know they should be putting their needs first, but just don't know how. Dave is the sole caregiver to his wife, Charlene, since 1996. He knows firsthand what caregivers are going through, because he is one. He now speaks all across the country, offering caregivers his amazing caregiver support package. Even the airlines tell us that in the event of an emergency, to put your oxygen mask on first before you help your child with their mask. They know that those who don't heed their advice often black out, thus becoming unable to help either themselves or their child. And caregivers are exactly the same way. It's My Life Too. Thrive and Stay Alive as a Caregiver will help caregivers who are neglecting their sleep, diet, and social life and learn to put their needs first. Pick up your copy today or buy one for your special caregiver. On sale everywhere and at caregiverdave.com.